Alrighty, let's jump in. Audio looks like it's working. So, we've got a pretty big one today. We've got some updates to... Whoops, hang on. Okay, sorry about that. Let's try again. Big one today. We're going to be looking at the new released, as of yesterday, I believe it was, VOX Importer. We're going to be looking at a light probe generator. We're going to look at exporting a space from a previous template into the new one, where to find the latest template, and things like that. So, if we get time after that, I'd like to get into or continue the asset that we were making at the last workshop. But I keep adding things to the list, so we'll see how that goes. So, let's jump in. Alrighty, so first up, we need to get the latest template before we do all the cool things. So for that, we need to download our space starter template on our GitHub, and that's from docs.metaverse.com, get started, which is here. So let's get that. So go to code, go to download zip, save as. Now, basically, I always put this on my desktop because I open and start so many projects. I'm just going to do that again. So save that, replace it, and then done. So we can now close that. I'll keep that up because we're going to probably look at that a couple of times. Next up, we need to make a new project. So let's go to Mona, builds. No, I'm going to do tutorials, workshops. And let's do that. So I've got my folder. I've got some Vox files, so we're going to open those up. Thanks to Rizzle for getting me those. I haven't seen them yet, so it'll be interesting to see what they are. And then we need to extract our project file here. I will pretty much always use a numbering system on all names. So let's do Vox light probes. Click on that, and then we have that. So that's our new updates. And then we can open it. Now, first up, I've opened up this asset. This was what I did the last light probes tutorial in. So we can sort of look at a comparison between those two. And notice up here how there's a playground and QA. And there's only a few assets here. This is an older template. Now, the jump from this template to the new template is a bit of a big one. It will allow a lot of updates. So, for example, making sure you have the latest update in Unity rather than having to download all of the things. So, the best way to do it is to create a mintable file of this space. So, we're going to do that. So, as noted, this is the previous space, not the latest template. We haven't opened that yet. So I'm going to go to Mona, build mintable files. It'll take a second. There we go. Okay, so what we're planning to do is we're going to open the new space that I just downloaded, and we're going to import this asset into it. Now, some of your assets with this approach, unfortunately, may not be ported. So anything in the space and all of the dependencies of that, so textures, materials, audio, all that sort of stuff, will be in this mintable package. So all we need to do is port that in. Now, if you have assets, models, materials, textures, all of those that are in your project but are not in the hierarchy, those will not port. So you'll actually need to manually drag and drop those in the files. It's pretty easy, so not too much of an issue. All right, moving on. So we need to open our new space. So let's go to tutorials, workshops, updates, this one, the space here, that one there, and then go open. Hey Argent, how's it going? I believe I am in Twitch, yes. I'm multi-dimensional. The main thread, I've been in Twitch from the beginning, actually. I think there's one workshop that I did that was not because Restream was having some issues. But yeah, for the most part, I'm actually streaming on both. YouTube is the main one. So anyone in the Discord and whatever, I recommend going to YouTube. And also they are kept on YouTube. But Twitch is there just in case anyone happens to jump in. Okay, so as you can see, we have some new tools. We have our Mona library. We have a template utility. We also have this button here, which has our tools. For example, the light probe generator. We have our AI material generator. We have our VOX Importer. All of these. We also have access to all of the assets that have been submitted and cleared with the file naming system in our tools. So super useful. All right. So for today, what we need to do, I'm going to close that because I want to make this look more Mona. So we've got load space scenes. Okay, this is now officially right mouse click removes the untitled, so we just have our 3, and then we're good to go. What I will usually do then is also go save, and this space is, I could make the playground. But first, I want to import our Mona scene. So for that, we need to go to Assets, Import Package, Custom Package. We need to go to our mintable file that we just created. Click on that, and then go Open. These are all the things that it will import. Make sure that you get rid of, especially if it's older scripts. It should do this, so it sort of knows that the assets are already in here. But sometimes it doesn't pick up because they're so different, maybe. So if you have like any reactors or warp volume scripts, I would recommend taking them off, because those would then override the new ones, and that's not great. Once again, mostly a problem if it's like the first template, if you're working from that. So keep that in mind. But it looks like I don't have any, so I'm just going to go import. And then go reload. And then we have our space. F to zoom in on that. So yeah, that is how you import an asset into, well, not an asset, how to import a whole space in Argent is multidimensional too. That is how you import a whole space into the new template, and that allows us to look into Mona library and all of the last things. And moving forward, we should be able to, if we go to template utility, check all of the versions. So which is the Unity version, which I have the correct version, template version 1.3, which is the latest version, and WebGL build module, which is installed. So you can use this to quickly get a read on if you're using the right information and stuff like that. So that's super useful. All right. So let's jump into the second stage, which is let's go into VOX Importer. So to use the VOX Importer, we go to Mona Library, go to the tools, community assets there as well, but we want the tools, and we want the VOX File Importer. Download. Basically, we'll have that. Import. And that's it. Now, what that does is there's no special thing, there's nothing that you can do to import. That literally just allows you to drag and drop voxel files or .vox files into the space. So if I pull up my voxel importer, so where was this again? Tutorials, workshops, updates, vox. We have our .vox files. I can now, if I want to, make a new folder. And if I wanted to, I can go right mouse click, import package. No, import new asset, sorry. So one more time, right mouse click, import new asset on that. And then we can go to our folder. And I can import, let's say, 2 of these. Import. And because we have the import tool, those now work. And they'll make sort of prefabs. So they have a few things in there. So you'll have the color palette, the texture, the mesh, all in a prefab. And the other tool or approach, the other approach that I use is basically grabbing them from the Explorer, dragging them into the asset here. And that'll do it as well. So there's 2 ways to import assets. I'll use both depending on my mood at the time. And then all we have to do, so let's do a create empty. And I'm going to drag all of them in there. Now, the reason I'm doing that is because if I do them here, they will be put to 000 and very, very big. But that also means that these assets are under the space automatically, and you'll skip that common problem. So if I just do this, like so, you'll note that if I close this, they will be outside of the space object, and we actually need them inside. So that is one approach to recommend it, is put it where you want and then move it rather than put it kind of flakily. It doesn't really work that great. So if I put it here, like it doesn't, depending on its polygon location, stuff like it. So this is a better way to do it. So let's make those a bit smaller. Now I'm doing that on the parent, so that'll do it for the children. Because scale, rotation, and position is based on the parent. So this looks good. Pardon me. Yeah. So let's place these around the space. What are these? Rizzle, what did you send me? Okay. Now let's straighten these up a little bit. Put it down there. Okay. That works. Let's move that one up. Maybe there. Okay, so that worked both ways. So I'm going to do that. Now, I've been using them as a general, so I'm going to pivot local. And that way, when I rotate them, they'll do that. But as their pivot is a little bit off, It's not the best. So I'm going to go back to, yeah, center and global, rotate those, and then we have that, which is what we want. Put them here on the wall because that looks pretty cool. All right. So on this, just to show what light probes do, I'm going to put 2 of these as dynamic objects, and 2 of these at the end. That's reorder these a little bit. There we go. Okay, so 2 of these are going to be fixed, and 2 of these are going to be dynamic. And the light probes, when we get to them, will hopefully make that very clear on what light probes do. So that'll be a good example of that. Okay. So that's a voxel importer. Once again, it's nothing, it's no tool specifically, but it allows you to import .vox files. Note that .vox files do have quite a high number of polygons. So these, for example, are a lot of polygons. So these ones going down is a lot of polygons into something like this, which is going across. We want this in WebGL. But it looks like because of the material, that's what it does. So if it's one material, it looks like .vox files will clean up that model. But if you're looking at different materials, these will be all separate objects. So let's look at, yeah. So note that. So if you had a Vox asset that every single Vox was a different color, that would actually be a really large asset in file size. And also materials. So let me just check. Oh no, they do it pretty well. Okay. So the material count is low, which is great. But the polygon count is maybe high. But maybe because of that, might be a bit of balance. So it depends on the asset. But yeah. Good to know. All right. Next up on the list is the light probe generator. Now, I have some light probes. The light probe generator will do this for you. So if I was doing this manually, I would be basically grabbing these, Control D, duplicating them, moving them along, Control D, duplicating, moving them along, which is a very slow and annoying process. And then you have to sort of consider where there is more light. So light changes over this direction. So you can see the pink and it fades off there. So you put more light probes here. You have things in the way, so I might have different light on this side than this side. So doing this manually can take a long time, even more so if it's a large space. So this is a simple space, and it still took a little while. So light probe generator is a tool that allows you to create light probes much faster. It may not be as accurate, but it is significantly faster, and you can modify those light probes after they're created. So that's sort of what you want to do. So I'm going to keep this so we can compare it. And the result of the light probe generator will be very different from this. Once again, manual, anything. So retopology creation is much slower, but much better. As a result, that said, if you use things like light probe generator or decimation or remesh, it will get some or most of the work done, but it won't be as good. So it's a bit of balance between time versus result. So I'm going to keep that though, and let's look at the Mona generator, the light probe generator. So once again, go to the Mona library, go to Tools, go to Light Probe Generator, download all of the things, import. Done. We can therefore close this. Now, after that, that's what it is. So the light probe generator is a component. So it's not a tool up there, it's an actual component. So go to probes, I'm going to create a new asset. So create empty. Light probe generator. And then I'm going to add the components. So go light, and then we can just go light probe generator here. And a big box will form, basically. So what happens is this box is where the light probes are going to be placed. You can have more than one light probe in a space if you want. The first thing you need to do is resize the box to the area you want. So if you click the letter next to the parameter, you can scale that down. So we can do that. Do that. And then we can move it up and down as needed. So that's how we modify the size. You can, of course, type in the numbers there as well. Next up, we have different methods of creating the light probe. So choose any or all of these. The default's usually a pretty good place to start, but I'll go through them all. And if you roll over these, it will tell you the approach to each one. So give those a read. Placement density is how many light probes in a section. So, for example, if it's 8, there'll be sort of less. If it's 16, there'll be more. And then with optimize, you can sort of balance out between how many light probes you want. Generally speaking, it is recommended to keep your light probe count to less than 1,000 for the whole space. So if you have a big space, they might be pretty sparse. If you have a smaller space, then you can have more. But as always, less is better. It will run better. The file size will be smaller because these do add to the file size. So let's do generate at 8. Okay. So we've got that. Now, what this one does is it will create a nav mesh. And just quickly, a nav mesh is kind of like a floor where Unity thinks dynamic objects and avatars and characters will run. And it will create sort of assets around that. So that's that one. Let's remove that one. Do volume scatter placement. Generate. So that one, well, let's have a look. Scatters uniform grid of probes inside the set volume. So this is not very uniform and it's very small. So let's increase the amount of them. Let me try something. So, so let's go that again with placement density. So sometimes it's up and down. I think it actually says that. Controls the density of the high group generation. A lower value means more probes. Yeah, that makes sense. It only affects the volume scatter and raycast placement volumes. So, yeah. Adjust the number as you need to. So that's too many. So let's go 3. That's good. Now, as noted, if I wanted to, I could edit these. So I'm going to move these ones across because I sort of want it at the end of the walls. Then move these in a bit. So super useful on that as well. So I'm going to put that there and there. And then Control D because I want those across here. And that's good. So that's that approach. So adjust your placement density as needed, depending on the tool. Raycast placement. Generate. So this will basically generate probes from each light. So I'll just sort of throw them out and see where they need to go. So let's put that to a bit less. So let's say 4. That's a bit less. 3. Oh, no, sorry. 4. 5. 10. Getting better. Still too high. 20. Don't need that many. 30. That's not bad. So yeah, light probes will do that. Object bounds placement. This will put light probes around each object and its bounds, if that makes sense. So let's go 2. So that one is literally based on the object bounds placement. So that one won't change so much. So let's put a bit of everything. Let's go 10, generate. Small space. I think volume scatter was actually the best. Yeah. So this one works for me. So as you can see, this is a really good way to make a lot of... wrong one. I'll get to that in a second. To make a lot of probes real quick. And then modify those you want. Now, the other thing you can do is if you have a lot of objects, like so, we can merge those. So if there's 2 light probes in a space and they're less than 1 meter distance, they will be merged. So that's a really good way to sort of fix that and then get that sort of approach, which actually looks really good. I think I'll just leave that. Won't even edit it. Actually, I will. All I'm going to do is press the edit light probes, get these end ones, and put them towards the end. That's the only change I'm going to make. Now we're good. Light probe's done. Now, light probes will only work when you bake the space. So we have our light probes, which are very controlled, and light probe generator, which kind of creates the same results. And if you go to console, it will show you how many you have. So basically we have 102 on the optimized one, and when we made it first time, it was 1,824. So yeah, make sure you optimize your assets. So what lighting will do, it will take the light information and it will bake them into the light probe generator. So if I can edit so I can click on them. So each of these dots will have light information at that point. So all of this empty space has a piece of information. So here it'll be a little bit pink. Over here it won't be pink. Over here it will be a little bit pink. Things like that. So over here it'll be a little bit blue. So when your dynamic object moves around the space, it will sort of show that effect. But for that we need to light map the information, which is why this space looks so smooth and nice, because I did a light mapping tutorial on it. So I'm going to keep everything the same. I'm going to go quiet on the stream because light mapping is a thing. Okay. Generate. Okay. So we can see our assets here. And that looks good. So let's have a quick look at these. So notice these are static. still on edit. Get rid of that. So we can get rid of these ones now because I'm happy with these. Now, on these assets, for example, we see them to static. I'm going to hide the gizmos. Now, the reason static is the pros and cons is a static object should be fixed and cannot move. So when I move it, the shadow is still going to be there. So light mapped lighting will not move, but looks really good. Whereas dynamic objects do not have shadows unless you have a real-time light with shadows. So you can do that, but real-time lights with shadows are very expensive. So you only want 1 or 2 of those in a space. But if you notice, if I move this, can you see it? Very subtle, I think. So you'll have a little bit of pink, and when you move away, there'll be sort of none. Now, I think I turned it off, but there is a way to show light probes and the effect they're having. Light probe group, no, that works. I forget where to show that, unfortunately. Yeah, you can see it. You can just see it. A little bit. So you have that. So light probes allow you to make dynamic objects fit the environment a little bit better. Well, a lot better, actually. If you don't have them, then objects and avatars, because they are dynamic objects, will look a bit strange. So there's that. All right. So I believe that's it. What don't you get? Okay, let's do this. Let's do an example of that. So I'm going to get rid of the light probe generator. So there are no light probes. And then I'm going to rebake the space. Now the thing is also, these might be real-time light. So I'm actually going to get rid of that as well. Or turn that off. Yeah. Also, what I'm actually going to do is make sure that this mesh... I'm not sure if VOX files will be what do you call it? Unwrapped properly. So that's one issue maybe with the VOX Importer, and that might be out of our control because VOX files are special. I'll say that much. So give me a sec. I just want to try something. Yeah, I'm wondering if those will unpack properly. So that might be a thing. I will look into that and see if I can come up with a better result for making sure that these get light mapped properly. All right, so let's do a quick bake and see what these look like with no lighting. I believe these lights are all baked. Yeah. So let's give that a shot. So notice how these are really dark. And notice how these are lit. Um, so when I move them around, then they're not going to change because I think they're using the ambient light of the space, not this light at all. So yeah, that is one of the main problems with not having light maps and not having real-time maps. So bouncing between limited real-time maps, um, static or baked lights, and light probes with light mapping. That is your lighting solution if you ever need it. So there's that. Okay, any questions from the chat before I move on to some other stuff? Vox comes from an ecosystem called Magic of Voxels, I think it's called. This one. So it is a free asset that allows you to make those sort of files, and looks like it does some pretty cool stuff. I wouldn't recommend bringing this into Mona. Once again, because the materials are different, all of those would be cubes. So the poly count on this one would be insane. Same with these ones. But once again, as always, if you had sort of like one building and most of these was one, and that was static and created in a way that you could optimize that sort of stuff, you could actually do some really cool stuff with that. The other approach is get the voxel file, take it into Blender, possibly, and see if the joining and remeshing or Boolean tools would allow you to optimize that as well. So yeah, there's definitely different approaches to optimizing things, but for now, I'm assuming that super high polygons will not work, but Vox assets like chairs and windows and doors, those are all possible. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. All right. Is that everything so far? So we've covered importing your previous template space into the new template. We've looked at the VOX Importer and what that looks like. We've looked at Light Pro Generator and lighting in general, like a quick overview of lighting. Cool. Done, I think. So, how are we going for time? 40 minutes. All of that in 40 minutes. That's a good deal. Okay. Let me see something. I want to show you something in regards to no light probes and no real time light. So my avatar, which is not a good avatar, very dark. So let's change my avatar. This is playground. I can't. Can I not change? Oh no! I can't change my avatar in playground. Okay. Yeah. So notice these are pretty dark and they don't look very good. Also, I'm hoping when we do it, because I'm going to redo it all, that there's no pink. But because this is like using Mtoon shader on this particular avatar, that might not work anyway. So, not sure if that's going to be the best example. So let's try something. I always go to mine. This is home now. This is my house in the metaverse. Okay, let's get my Ready Play Me going again. Yeah. All right. This will be interesting to see actually. So I'm gonna leave that, quit, refresh. Ah, cool. So that's how you get your avatar in the space. So if you notice here, like it looks a little off because there's a lot of light in here, but I'm really quite dark, um, which isn't great. I think also there are reflection probes, so those are applied to the character. So that's another thing that is considered when looking at dynamic objects. So let's go through all that again and put our super fast light probes on because we can do that now. So let's go create light probe generator inspector light probe generator. Let's quickly scale this accordingly. Not that one. Out there. Out there. No. Cool. What was good? Can't find all of it. Optimize. Optimize. Nope, that's too many. Merge distance. One? No. Generate. Optimize. There we go. That's what we want. And then quickly just move these up a bit. So much faster. Well done, Tom. Cool, that works. Next up, let's do just lighting. Like that over there. Lighting. Once again, you need to light map before you get the light probes in functioning work correctly. So let's just do that. I don't have food in my apartment. Real or okay, that's done. One map here looks good. And let's playground that one. So as you can see, it's much brighter now. The assets over here look good. And if we go close, you can see very subtly there's some pink in there and some blue. Need to make them stronger so it's obvious. So yeah, light probes. Very important. Okay. back to the lamppost. I'm going to save that. Moving on. So, close that one. Did I have two open? I had two open. Okay. So let's jump back to our lamppost. Lamppost. Is it this one? Nope. I don't even know where it is. Where did I put it? Lamp. There we go. Okay, cool. So on our last workshop, we made this. Still very nice. The catch is, it has 3 materials, and for a simple asset like this, that's a lot. So if I had, we basically want to keep our material count really low for a bunch of reasons. So what I'm going to do in this tutorial, we'll see how we go for time, because I'd like to create a Mona library asset for this. But we want to get our material count down. So we have 1, 2, 3 materials, and we want 1, because every time you create an asset in Mona that has 3 materials, the computer has to think, let's say, 3 times. And if you have 100 assets in a space that have 3 materials, that's 300 times it has to think. And then it just like escalates from there. So ideally, you don't have to, especially if it's a simple space. But if you want to start talking about optimization, this is something to consider. So I'd like to look at that. If you're beginning Blender, don't worry about this too much. Just focus on the unwrapping part, because that is important. But I think this, even though this is very early in your process of learning Blender, I think in game spaces, especially WebGL spaces, keeping optimization in the top of your head is very important, and allows your space to run well as look cool, which is the most important metric. So what I'm going to do is create one texture that has all of the materials on the one. So I'm going to do this in Photoshop, actually. Now, I would usually use Substance Painter because it has cool stuff. But most people have Photoshop or image generation tool for sure. So I'm going to do that. Now, we want this file to be pretty small, because we're sort of going with a low polygon style. So I'm going to do 512 by 512. Okay. And then we are going to make some different areas. So I'm going to block this off for reasons. So we need 3 materials. So the first one is going to be wood. So I'm going to put that in the top half. So let's go with kind of, that color looks good. We'll put these on different materials, so I'm going to do that. We also need some metal. Let's sort of go about there. And we're going to need some glass. Okay. Now, if you have a material that goes across all the way, you can have this looping. So if I create a thing that goes all the way across here, that will keep going and loop. So that's what we kind of want. Now with the metal, we have different proportions of areas. So I want to make some really simple bolts, I guess you could say. I'm going to put this on half as well. So 100, what is it? 128. That's the one. About there, not so important. So basically, we want sort of like that look. So I want to do some just detail, and of course, this would look very different when doing it properly. Is that too many? That's too many. Cool. Um, and we also need sort of like a long one. So let's. Hmm. Okay. No, nope, nope, nope. Yeah, that's good. Nope. Now, because this is a simple color thing, I can do this as is. But if I was going to do some detail, I'm actually going to need to make it separate. So I'm going to do that as well. This will make a lot more sense in a moment. Maybe there. Mm. And the last one I want to do is like a strip. So that might be useful in other situations. I'm going to get rid of that one. And just do that, maybe. Cool. All right. Let's do really, really, really simple. Um, what do you call it? Wood grain. Um, ah, maybe it's smaller. Now, be careful with this because that's going to go down, and then that won't tile. So we actually want this to happen. Actually, I'm going to try something. Um, and then I can erase a lot of that to make it a little bit more natural. So that'll be cool. Now, of course, this texture would look better than this, but this is also super fast. Best wood texture ever. Now, the other thing we need to do is because this is going to be transparent, we need to do a thing. So I'm going to put all of those in here. And then I'm going to make that so I can make this, let's say, a gray. like a dark gray. And then we can get rid of the background. So this will make the transparency what we want it to be. So this is our diffuse. So I'm going to export this somewhere. Is this in the Halloween space? I hope so. Well, we'll put it here for now. Lamp post diffuse. Okay. Now, the next thing we need to do is add that material here. So I'm going to actually join all of these assets. So select them all with shift, dink, 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 and go right mouse click, join. Now, as you'll note, we'll have 3 materials. So we don't want that. So I'm going to get rid of them. And just go lamp post here. And then we're going to go to shading. Now, this is the material elements in Blender. I don't use this when I'm focusing on Unity. I will make the material in Unity, but for this activity, the trim sheet activity, we need to see what we're doing. So I'm going to go add texture, image texture, go open. Go to where I put that material I just made, which was in Halloween, assets, lamppost diffuse. And then we need to drag the color down to base color. And as you can see, you can see it there. Now that's all we need. This is just a visualization of what we're going to do in Unity eventually. But in this case, we are going to fix this. Now, so most of your assets will need to be unwrapped. What unwrapping will do is kind of unfold your asset and make it look flat. So you can put a 2D texture on it. So to do that, we click on the object we want to do, go to UV editing, go to X-ray so we can select all of our assets. And as you can see, our UV is not great. But there's a couple of things to do. So first, select the object in object mode and go Control A. Go scale is the main one. Sometimes I will do all transforms because I want the pivot to be at the dot there. So you need this to be 1. So when you're using UV tools, this will be based on this scale. And if you don't do it correctly, it'll not work great. So with that, we can put that up. Now, one tool we can do, once again, select the asset, press Tab, or go to Edit Mode, X-ray mode to select all of the objects. Now, in other situations, like in the 3 material version, I would just go UV, Smart UV Project. Okay. And what that will do is basically unwrap the whole asset into this, and then everything will be the correct scale. So if you use a tiling material, say separate wood, metal, and glass, that would work. But if you go to the material mode up here, once again, not exactly. So what we are going to do today is put these objects or these materials where you want. Now, just note, because I want to make this very clear, if you are using a 3 material approach, the unwrap smart would work 100%. So if this was all wood, that would look fine. And then you could scale the texture in Unity, and that's fixed. So you could stop there, move into Unity. But I'm going to do this now because its trim sheets are super useful for optimization. Once again, 1 material is significantly better than 3. So, the best way to do that is I'm going to select these three. And I'm going to click all of the directions that I want to be that way. So that's already done because I used unwrap, and then I can scale it up to about there. Now note, because of this going across and it's tiling, it now looks tiled and looks pretty good. Once again, do these ones as well. Now, because this was unwrapped that way, I'm going to press R, and all of those work the same. So G and S. The only catch is only X and Y work, because this is a 2D space. Where your cursor is, will do the activity. So S here will scale that, S here will scale that. So we have that and that. For this one, let's do some interesting stuff. Let's make sure. I think that works well. But it's got some blue for some reason, because that's up here, and the blue is down here because it's tiled. So I'm going to move that down there. Kind of in there. So that looks good. So as you can see, it's actually quite easy to do and set up. Just click on the polygons that you want to modify. If you've used Smart UV Project, a lot of this is already sort of undone. And then you just move them around the space. Be careful with how big it is. So that's going to go over. Maybe. That makes it clearer. And you'll get that. So you want to make sure that the asset, if you're looping, is in the area you expect it to be. You might be able to do a setting up here. I haven't done it. Where you can actually tile the material. View. Not too sure. I haven't used it. But yeah, that's a possibility. SGR are your friends. Now note this one is different. And that's, which one is that? Now a very useful thing with UVing is this one here. What that will do is if I select it here, it will also select it here. But some of these tools are more limited because of it, and you also see everything. So we kind of want to do that and then turn that off so we can sort of select all of that again. So that's useful. Now, another useful tool is, say I want these to line up. So I can use UV, project from view. And then it will put all of that together, which is what we want. R to rotate, G to move, S to scale. Good. Do the same again. Rotate, scale. Now notice how that side's good, but that side is not. So we're going to move that over here as well. Let's do this again. Smart UV project. Unwrap. So it just does the ones you are connected to or selected. So that's a useful tool as well. Up here, you also have access to 4. 4 will give you this one, which will select the island. Each of these is an island. So sometimes that is a useful tool to sort of get into these elements well as well. Okay, so that's good. What I might have done is like reduce the glass and put an end here. So I might do that because that'll be useful in eventually, but not for now. Okay, so that's the wood done. Now, next up, we want to basically grab a lot of these things, and this is why I did the dots like I did. So this is a square, so that can be a square. Also a square. S for scale. Now, if it's a little bit of off, that's fine. Especially in a stylized thing. If anything, that actually adds life to the asset. So you could do some interesting stuff with that. Scale. A little bit more. Scale. Works. So there we have our sort of metal section. Um, let's continue, I guess. Now notice how these ones are a little bit uh, scaled in different ways. Now this is where it gets a little interesting. So the circles will look correct, but it will line up a bit badly there. So another tool, if I press 1, I go to vertex. So I can go scale X 0. We'll scale those down to 0. Another one, much faster. Select the 2, right mouse click, align X. Right mouse click, align Y. So that'll be flat there. And then we can move those. Depending on the scale of that, though, you might get some warping depending on how it all lines up. So play with that. In this case, it doesn't do so much. So that's kind of what we want. Another approach is, of course, just this. So lots of ways to do the same thing. And that is game development in one sentence. Okay. So we have our squares. Now, that one also, this one is look a bit more of a square, so we can just scale that one up. Good. And same with this one, probably. Scale. Done. All right. So we've got those two. And we need to do this one as well. So another approach, once again, many ways to do the same thing. UV. Now we did project from view, which will sort of do the scale. So if I make it really big, project from view, that'll be bigger. If I make it really small, project from view, smaller. But another approach is project from view bounds, and that will just fill the box. So sometimes that is very useful as well, depending on how or what you're unwrapping. And in that case, I just did 2 at the same time, so that saves a bit of time on that. So once again, that one, project from view, grab, scale, done. Now, I'm actually going to delete that because we will never see it. Delete. Delete. Now, that one, though, is that. So we're going to keep that. But we do need this one. So that one, scale. All right. So that's that metal done. The next one is all of this. So once again, select that. If you remember from the workshop, Control L will select everything that has at least one thing selected. So Control L, that'll select everything. Now, this one's a little bit more complicated because we have a lot more stuff, but this is why we're using different scales here. So let's do the following. I'm going to put this one there. Same with that. Rotate that. And then what are those for? Oh, those are windows. Maybe. Yeah. So that goes there. Okay. Now, I think those weren't selected because I wasn't on X-ray mode like this. So it will only select things on this side. Like so. So be careful with that all the time. It is 100% a thing. It is a little bit frustrating. Four. So you can select the island. There we go. So that's good. Now, let's grab these ones. All of these ones. Now, we actually don't want bolts on that one. So I'm going to go Control L. That one as well. Control L. Grab all of them. And I can just put this in the middle. Actually, what I'm going to do is want UV project. Done. That's must neater. Scale down. Put it in there. Excellent. This one, let's put it up the top like a square. No, I just want to put that there. That'll be good. This one, on the other hand, once again, unpack, go. This one and this one. So this one I wanted to clean up, just make it easier, but then I want to split these off. So split, selection, and then note you do have to move it. If I don't move it, so split, selection, so that's now split. But if I do this, it will kind of unsplit it. Yeah. So split, selection. Nah, once again, right mouse click. So there's a few tools. I'll usually mainly use align X, align Y, split and stitch and merge. So there's that. So in this case, we are going to, let's put this one, okay. I'm going to put them all the same way and overlap them. Then put them down here. Press 1 to go to vertex, and then go align X. Align X. Align Y. Align Y. Or scale 0, that also works. And we also want these to be a little bit higher. So move GY to get that spot in, and then GY to get that spot in. That way we have that. All right, these ones, what are we going to do with these ones? Hmm. Yeah. Now, this is an interesting example of maybe it will warp, maybe it won't. So I'm just going to flatten these ones and see how it looks. So with that distance and that shift, it does look like there's a fair bit of warping on this one, which is what we don't want. So what else could we do with that? Let's undo. Scale it down. That could work. So it is kind of like trim sheets are interesting on that. You kind of play around with it actually, with interesting results. So that scales a little bit. Let's give it a try though. Like it's not bad, but it does warp a little bit, which I'm not a fan of. So where else might work? The other approach is we just scale it down. Do that. The other approach is just noise. No. um, so what I'm going to do in this case is go that way. Yeah. And then just go project from view. Project from view. And leave it kind of as is. Because of the scale issues with moving these two. So making a square shape into a non-square shape is quite difficult. So I'm just going to sort of do that, and that'll be good to go. Next up is this one. So once again, make sure that the X-ray is on, so it selects everything. Put that on, so I can only select the things I want. Just kind of these ones. These ones. Holding control, select to unselect things. And then we have that. Okay. So this one, G. I don't think we want bolts on that one. I think we just want to make that big. But I kind of want bolts to be around all of this. Oh, that's fun. Let's do that. Got the bolts there. That looks good. Happy with that. So I'm sure you get the picture though. Of what we're going for here. Once again, split, selection, move. Holding left control will snap. So that's useful for these sort of situations. So R snap. Okay, that looks good. And maybe for these ones, I'll just leave as is. So let's once again grab all that. Make that clear. X-rays on, so that's good. Turn that off. And let's just grab these for now. I'm going to unwrap them. Why not? Now note this is selected, but these are not. So be careful what your... This will pay attention to this. These will pay attention to this. So be careful what you do with that. So I think for now, let's just scale it down, and then that'll be good. Okay. So better as a result, we have textures, and we've unwrapped it, and it's cool. Done. With one material that we've named lamppost, which is really good. Okay, so let's take that and put it into Unity. How are we going for? Yeah, excellent. So in the last workshop, should we build this? In this workshop, we've unwrapped it to be one material. It could be 3, but I recommend 1. Once again, as you're learning, do the skill set that you are comfortable with and get to the more complicated ones a bit later. Teaching you this was partly how to get around the unwrapping tool, but also keeping in mind that eventually the goal is optimization. So moving from 3 materials to 1 is a very good optimization, especially when you're looking at hundreds, if not thousands, of assets over the course of one space. So hopefully that will help with that. The last thing we need to do is basically import this into Unity and then export that as a Mona library asset. So if you haven't already, or if you've modified the space, or basically anytime you remember, I recommend selecting the object and going in object mode, go Control A. The main one you want to do is scale, but I will usually do all transforms, especially if I'm exporting this asset with the pivot here. So if I rotate it here, that's great. If I move it, that's where it's going to be moved from. So in Unity, that's what we want. Now, if I wanted to, just as a small note, I could go right mouse click, set origin, and I can put this to other locations. So geometry to origin, so I can move the thing down. I don't use that one very often though. Origin to geometry, so that will put it in the sort of center of where it thinks that is. Occasionally I'll use that. 3D cursor, which is the little dot, which you could move around here. I don't use that very often, but some people find that very useful. Origin to center of mass. This is a bit more center, I guess. And then you've got origin to center of mass volume, which is kind of there, I guess. That said, I will usually put it there, because that's where I want it in Unity. So once done, I can go File, Export, FBX. Unity uses FBX best. It does support blend files and OBJ, but generally I think blend files are bigger in file size and sometimes a little complicated with depending on which version of Blender you're using. And FBX just works. So there's that as well. So let's put this into anywhere. Blender Basic. Let's just do that. I don't think I have a space in here yet, so that's why. So let's put one. So let's go key things for exporting. I always recommend using selected objects. this will only export the lamppost or anything you have selected. So it will not export the camera and the light, which is very important. So select the assets you want to export, and then go selected objects. Occasionally, and I don't know if this is a Blender bug or a Unity bug, but if you're not doing animations or anything, this has issues with armatures, so rigs, skeletons and stuff like that, and animation. But if it's a simple object, I would actually do apply transform, because that increases your chances of Unity doing it correctly. Usually it's okay. Sometimes it's not. So I'll keep that in. I'll point that out when we get to Unity. So this is optional, but for still objects like this, recommended. And then just go export FBX. Lamp 01. Cool. All right. So let's go to where we put that and actually make... Let's find a space. So that was Mona, tutorials, workshops, Blender Basics, close, space data main, unzip here. One, Mona, library. Cool. I'm going to grab the, what do you call it? The thing that does the stuff. I'm going to grab the texture, X, V. So my approach, you do not have to do this at all, is create folders in project. So this will keep the blend files and things like that. Mona will create some tools here when we open it. So I'll get to that in a second. So let's go Unity Hub. Open. Workshops, Blender Basics, the one we just uploaded, open. Mona load space scenes. No, I did the wrong one. Cancel. Mona load space scenes. There we go. Remove scene. Okay. Now we have our packages here. So I'm going to drag and drop the assets that we just made. So this is in tutorials, workshops, Blender Basics, assets. We don't want blend, we just want the FBX and the diffuse. I'm going to put the model there, but then move the diffuse down to textures. We also want a material. So I'm going to create a material, call it lamp post. So yeah, right mouse click on materials, create material. We have all of our assets here. We just want the diffuse in the albedo. Albedo, diffuse, and color kind of overlap a lot. Metallic is low. Now I could tweak the texture to do this, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to make it sort of like a low smoothness there. Now I could do normal maps and stuff like that, but not important. Now go to lamp. When importing your asset, you always want to go to model, generate light map UVs, and apply. So if your asset is used in light mapping, it will have better light maps. Unless you do that yourself, which is a whole different thing. So this is the easy way to go about that. The other thing we can do to set up our asset well is go to materials and drag our lamppost asset here on demand remap, apply. We have our asset. Next thing we need to do is drag our object that we now have into the space, like so. Ta-da! Now I'm going to move the spawn point a bit. Let's get him over there. Okay. So we have our lamppost. So that's the object. Now, for an asset, we want to add a couple of extra things to make it a real asset. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to create an empty object at 0, 0, 0. Call this lamppost. First, I'm going to put my object in it. Now, I could put a mesh collider on it. This is a low polygon asset, so that would be fine. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to create another empty, call this colliders, and make them box colliders. Because once again, that is an optimized approach to doing it. So I'm just going to use this tool to go see our view, go edit colliders. So we have our dots, and then make a simple collider for our asset. So once again, manual is slower but better. Mesh collider is quick but less performant. And it also depends on the asset. So I have done tutorials on optimizing mesh colliders. So check out the workshops or the tutorials for that. Just scaling these around. Like so. What I'd like to do is put a small reactor on this. So if anyone hits this object, it sort of wobbles. So it looks like physics. I think that would be cool. Can I do it quickly? No. So the reason that we can't do that is because this is one object. So that's a whole thing that I might do in a future tutorial, perhaps. So for these two, I added a new box collider. It is possible. Unfortunately, you can't name them because this would make things a lot easier. But I'm going to right mouse click this one, do copy component, right mouse click on any of these components, and then go paste component as new. And then you have that asset done again. So that's a useful tool as well. And then move that down here. So there we go. So we have our lamp, we have our mesh, and we have our colliders. Now, if I wanted to, say we didn't do the box collider thing, and just do add component, mesh, collider, that is done. But yeah, low polygon assets, that's okay. High polygon assets, not okay. So that said, I like optimization. I think it's important. So I do it for all the, like, for everything, if I can. It is possible to make a new lower polygon asset and use that in your mesh collider. So, for example, here is a cube, and that's what that asset is called here. That's called a cube. I should have renamed it. But if I made a new one, I could drag the mesh, which is this, not this, it's this one, into the collider, and that would optimize that. So that is one approach to it. But I like my boxes, so I'm going to stick with that. Okay, so we have our lamppost at 0, 0, 0. we have our mesh also at 0, 0, 0. And that's very important, because if I did that out here, this is at 0, and then I rotate it, it's not really rotating in the right way. So make sure that your mesh and assets are kind of around the main pivot. So when you move it, it sort of works better when people add it. This will be a common mistake with Mono library assets. So if you download them, some of them might not have done that. It's kind of easy to clean up. You just move around the assets a bit. But if you are adding to the Mono library, I recommend trying to make it as neat as possible so people like your stuff. And the pivot point on pivot and local on the asset is kind of a key point in that. All right. So we have our asset made how we would normally make it. But when it comes to Mono library assets, there is a file structure that we want to use because if you download a bunch of assets and you have similar names or the same name as other assets or other builders or other things like that, when you import the next one, that will override them. So to make that clean, we're sort of creating a very specific Mono library folder structure, which is this one. So I'm going to put this on a side screen. Get rid of that one so we can look at it. So first one is Mono library. And that's in the new template. So that's already there. Note that there is an underscore. So if you need to make this yourself, make sure that there is an underscore, capital M, capital L, all of that. Under that, we have a category. So let's put this under asset. No. Yeah, create folder. So there's no reactors or anything like that. So I'm just going to say asset. Under that, I'm going to create a new folder, which is my name. So basically, if you make a bunch of assets, they can all be under yours. So that keeps the folder structure under you. So if you make many assets, that'll be nice and clean. Under that, we need a new one called... Where's folder? Here. Lamp post. And I'm going to put 01. I might make more lamp posts in the future, so I recommend putting a 01. You will have to keep track of this, so if you're going with the Mono library seriously, start tracking your assets. Sorry. I always forget this one. It's very important and it's very good for this, but I recommend this. So I'm actually going to undo it again. I'm going to go back to the Mad Empire. And then I'm going to create a new folder called assets. Now, this is purely your organization for users of your content. So this assets folder will have all of the things that you are creating. And we want that under a new folder, which is the lamppost one. This will make a lot more sense in a second. So basically, we want all of the assets that we're going to use in this. But for that, can I do this? Select dependencies. That doesn't work as well as I would like. Okay. So I'm going to do this to make this bit easy. I'm going to grab my asset. I'm going to drag that into the Mad Empire. So we have our prefab. I'm going to right mouse click this and select dependencies. Oh, interesting. And then why doesn't it grab that? That's annoying. Okay, select dependencies and then move them into the assets here. If it doesn't select all of them, you'll have to grab that as well. That's an interesting one. But we want the lamppost prefab with the blue box to be in the Matte Empire. Now, the reason we're doing this is because this one thing is what we want people to have access to. We don't want them to have all of this stuff viewable, so that'll be really, really neat. So you will have assets and lampposts and, let's say, lamppost 2, chair, whatever. So this will be neat, but when it comes down to it, if you collapse everything, all of my stuff is going to be in the one. That's why we're doing it. So it's a little annoying, I agree, but there is a method to our madness. Basically. So that's done. So we have none of these in these. We have our Mona library assets. And we can easily drag things around, rotate them as we want to, do cool stuff. So with that in mind, the next thing we need to do, actually, I want to do one thing, because this is transparent, but for that we need to go transparent. So there we go. So if I now place this there, you'll be able to see that that is transparent, which is what we want. Cool. Ah, interesting. Huh. That's annoying. Let's try this. Normal map. Let's try normal direction. Let's see something. Nope, the orientation's right. So as you can see, our asset is having a few glitches with the transparency, and to be honest, I'm not sure why. So for now, we're just going to leave it opaque, and then I would maybe clean that up. It's an interesting one. So there's that. Okay, so that's done. Now, once you have your folders set up correctly, asset, Matte Empire, assets, which it contains all the stuff, and then that, we can right mouse click on this and then go export package. You'll notice that it selects all of the things that we've done. So Matte Empire, assets, lamppost, assets there, and the prefab. Make sure to include dependencies. If your asset uses reactor, warp volumes, PPV, things like that, make sure to turn them off here. So if that had, for example, reactor dot whatever the code is, I forget what it is. Hang on. Yeah, just reactor. So if the script is there, I would turn it off. Now, the reason we're turning that off is because if I'm on a future template and you include your reactor is going to override their reactor, which is not great. So make sure to turn off any of the all of the reactor assets, like reactor, warp volumes, PPVs, any other ones we add in the future, so that doesn't overwrite people's things. Then we can go export. Put it where you want. So I'm going to go this one. No, not that one. This one. And let's call it my name. So TME, lamp post 1. Save. Okay. The next thing we need to do is basically go to the submission. Let's actually do it here. So I can just use submit to library. And that will load the page. and then you can go Airtable form. So what do we got? Lamp, post, 01. Let's put this under asset file. So we need to attach our thing that we just made. So let's go to tutorials, workshops, blend basics, material, 60K. Pretty small. Upload. Done. Preview image. I do not have one. So let's make a quick one. Now, I use this because it's a really easy way just to make everything sort of the same. So let's put that maybe there. Alt, print screen. Then we can go to Photoshop. New 512 by 512. Control V. And then we can sort of move it around and fit it in the space. Down a little bit. Cool. Looks beautiful. Moving on. Export. Once again, let's put this into... And I'm going to keep these all together. So, biopic. That'll do. Preview image. That's a better word. Should have done that. Let's do that. Upload. Poly count. Now, for that, what we can do, I'm assuming maybe we'll actually probably bring a tool for that in the future, but I'm going to look at a tool that I've downloaded, literally called Poly count. It is free. It is on the Unity store. So import that. So when you click on the asset, so where is that? Tools, poly count. I'm going to put this here. Now we want poly counts. We want selection. And then when you select it, it's 396. Now note this is triangles. So poly count and triangles are different. Hey Tesla Kid, Unity is one of... So Unreal doesn't support WebGL. So Unreal's automatically out. Godot might, but it is less popular. It's getting there though. Unity has the documentation, the support, because it's been around a long time. So Unity was the best bet at the time. So that's why. You done? So what did I say? 396. So note that's CPP. I do not know that one. What's that one? No. Unity is C#. Unreal is C++. That said, Mona, the thing that I'm building this for, doesn't support custom scripting because if you have custom scripting in the internet, bad things will happen. So we have things like Reactor to control animations for interactive. So if you walk into a collider, you can trigger an animation using Animator. So there's all that sort of stuff. So even if you wanted to use C++ in Mona, that's not supported at the moment because, yeah, open scripting on the internet is a way to very bad places. Let's keep this all together. Terms of service, yes. Make CCO, sure. And done. Okay. So that is getting your Mona library submission in place. The tricky part, and yeah, it is annoying, but there is a reason to do that on the grounds that otherwise there's a risk of different assets overriding other assets and messing up other people's or even your own assets. So this is what we're going with at the moment. We may try and figure out an easier way to do it, but yeah, that's it at the moment. So keep that in mind. I'll try and think of a way to make this a little easier to understand as well. But this is an example here. So we had Mono Library, which is fixed. Portals, which is kind of what you want to call it. So assets, portals. Most of the assets will be what's on the form. So I'd probably recommend that. So asset category. So textures, materials, music, sound, particles, skybox, animation, shader, asset, or Mona asset. The difference between these two is an asset could be kind of put into any ecosystem. FBXs, textures, materials, stuff like that. A Mona asset is something that would have reactor or warp volume or player property volume that does cool stuff, but wouldn't work in other ecosystems. So that's kind of the difference between those two. So that would be your asset, recommended asset feature, I guess you could say. All right. So let's have a quick look. Let's do this. I'm gonna do. No, I'll just leave it as is. It'll be fine. So let's make a bunch of these. Now note that when I put it in the space, it is not under space. We need it under space. So make sure you do that. What I will usually do though is put everything in an asset so I can move things as a whole if I want to. So rotate that. Boop, 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 boop. We got like sort of a walkway. And because I put them all in one asset, I can actually do that and then move it up. And I can also spell things correctly. Done. Then we can build it. Now, note, this is one thing. Playground and Mona Library. Make sure to press Playground, not Mona Library. So that's the thing. So we have our Playground. Let's go that. We have our exports. Drag that down. Ta-da! We have our asset library. Lampposts. Ta-da! And they are colliders. So I can't run through them. Now note, this is an interesting thing. Note how the asset is too small, I think. I probably would make this bigger. I could do this in Unity, but as a Mona library asset, you kind of want it to be where it should be when you drop it in. So my mistake was not testing it before I submitted it. But I'm on the team, so I can get that deleted, no problem. That is a little trickier and might take more time if you're doing it on your end. So what you want to do is make sure you do the testing, scale, positioning, all of these things on your Mona library asset in order to make it as good as possible. So if you release assets, people will actively look for your products, as with any product. So that would be the recommendation for that. So I'd probably make this. Not sure. I'd probably make sure that the lamp is higher than my head. But I'd probably put the bottom of the lamp there to the bottom of the thing here. So I'd scale it up a little bit and then resubmit it, basically. So for that, if I was going to do that, because this is now a prefab, I would go to one of them. I can click on this. And then I'm editing the prefab in the space. So that's what I probably want to do. So I could, if I wanted to, do 1.5 like so. That's kind of what I want to do. Problem is, the colliders are also not great. So you could do that. So that works. Another approach is just scale the whole thing. This is why prefabs are great. And then go back to the scene, and then you've got that. And then because that is done, we've got that. The problem, though, is the scale is 1.5. Now, me, as a perfectionist, would not want that. So depending on where you're at with your process, maybe you would want to make that 111. But to be honest, the 1.5 isn't so bad at all. It's not really an issue, and it would work properly. So there's that. Once again, game dev is a whole thing. So learning each and everything will take a little while. But yeah, your skill level will change how you do things, and you will always improve. There is always stuff to learn, which is kind of the fun part. No one is ever a professional in game development. You are always learning. So yeah, there's that. Okay, that is 2 hour session, pretty much exactly, which has covered all the things I wanted to do. So that's fantastic. So I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks for watching. Hope you learned a lot. And we'll call it a day. Have a good weekend. See ya.